Stop. This is not another battlefield update. This is the moment warfare changed forever. In just 30 days, over 9,000 missions have been executed not by soldiers, but by machines that do not hesitate, do not tire, and do not miss. Right now, across the front lines, Ukraine has unleashed a silent, relentless force that is dismantling Russian positions piece by piece faster than any army in modern history. Entire units are collapsing under pressure they cannot see, cannot predict, and cannot stop. Military analysts are already calling this the first true robotic offensive of the 21st century, and what you're about to witness is something that will be studied for decades. But here's the real question: if this is only the beginning, what happens when this technology scales beyond control? March 2026 exploded into a record-shattering month for Ukraine's ground robot operations. The numbers are staggering: over 9,000 missions completed by these tireless machines in a single month alone. That breaks down to more than 290 operations every single day, day after day, hammering Russian lines without pause. Compare that to November 2025, when Ukraine's UGVs handled around 2,900 missions. By December, the figure nearly doubled to over 5,200. January pushed past 7,000. February held strong above 7,900 despite intense fighting. And then March rocketed upward to this historic 9,000 plus mark. The momentum is undeniable, and the pattern is clear. Ukraine is scaling its robotic forces at a pace that has caught even its own commanders by surprise while leaving Russian defenses in chaos. What makes this surge even more terrifying for Moscow is the rapid spread across Ukrainian units. Back in November 2025, only 67 military units operated these ground robots. Fast forward to March, and that number has skyrocketed to 167 units actively deploying UGVs across the front. Elite formations are leading the charge. The 1st Separate Medical Battalion has turned UGVs into life-saving heroes on the battlefield. Assault powerhouses like the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade and the 92nd Separate Assault Brigade are using them with devastating effect. The 3rd Operational Brigade and the 95th Separate Air Assault Policia Brigade have also earned top honors for their robotic integration. These are not isolated experiments. This is a full-scale transformation, turning ground drones into versatile weapons that handle logistics evacuation and lethal strikes with equal deadly efficiency. Early UGVs started as humble supply carriers, but their evolution has been lightning fast and brutally effective. In the brutal fighting around Pokrovsk, Russian drones made traditional resupply runs almost suicidal. Ukrainian forces adapted by deploying small camouflaged UGVs that could slip through contested terrain undetected. By November 2025, these machines were delivering up to 90% of supplies to frontline troops in Pokrovsk, food ammunition, and critical gear arriving where human convoys would have been shredded. One standout model, the Termit, could haul 200 kilograms of cargo remotely guided from miles away by operators staying safely out of harm's reach. The impact was immediate. Fewer Ukrainian lives risked sustained pressure on Russian positions, and a logistical lifeline that kept defenders fighting longer and harder. Evacuation missions have become equally dramatic. On one intense 24-hour stretch, Ukrainian UGVs completed 6 daring rescues. These machines, often resembling rugged stretchers on wheels, raced across dangerous ground to pull wounded soldiers from hot zones. In that single day, 2 UGVs alone covered roughly 300 kilometers combined. Human teams could never match that pace under fire. Thanks to these robotic rescuers, at least 6 Ukrainian fighters are alive today who might otherwise have been lost. The bravery of the machines is turning the tide in the most human moments of this war, snatching lives back from the jaws of death, while operators direct them from secure positions far behind the lines. Yet the real terror for Russian troops comes when these once benign vehicles turn lethal. Ukraine has armed its UGVs in creative and horrifying ways that exploit every weakness in Moscow's attritional tactics. The K2 Brigade, home to the world's first dedicated UGV battalion, has mounted Kalashnikov machine guns on its robots. Commander Oleksandr Afanasyev put it perfectly. These machines charge into battle zones where no infantryman would dare show his face, spraying fire without fear or hesitation. Russian infiltration squads expecting overhead drones or distant artillery suddenly face what looks like a miniature tank rolling straight at them. Surrender becomes the only sane option, and it must happen fast, because the UGV keeps firing and advancing indifferent to bullets or casualties, easily replaced if destroyed. Explosive payloads have delivered even more shocking blows. In one unforgettable January operation by the 3rd Army Corps, a small UG-5 traveled 20 kilometers through contested terrain, navigating rubble and rough ground with surprising agility. Operators used a simple game-like controller to guide it into a collapsed building where Russian soldiers were hiding. The robot carried 12 anti-tank landmines. When it detonated, the blast wiped out the entire hidden unit in a single catastrophic explosion. Russian troops never saw it coming. The machine had slipped through their lines undetected, waited in ambush, and struck with overwhelming force. Scenes like this are multiplying, turning quiet sectors into death traps for Putin's infiltrators who thought they had found safe cover. The innovation does not stop at offense. When Russian strikes ignite fires in civilian areas, UGVs are stepping up in unexpected ways. In early April, after a Russian attack hit residential districts in Kramatorsk, flames raced toward dangerous gas canisters, sending human firefighters or soldiers into that inferno, risked secondary explosions and fresh casualties. Instead, the 12th Special Purpose Brigade Azov deployed a specialized firefighting UGV called Zmy. The robot moved in, doused the blaze from a safe distance, and prevented a far worse disaster, all while its operators remained protected far away. This was the first recorded use of such a system in active combat conditions, showcasing how Ukraine turns every challenge into a new robotic solution that saves lives on both military and civilian fronts. Behind every mission lies the deeper strategic victory solving Ukraine's manpower crisis. After years of grinding warfare, Ukraine faces real strain, shortages in key sectors, fatigue among veterans, and the constant pressure of replacing losses against Russia's much larger population. Russia has absorbed over 1.3 million casualties, yet keeps feeding fresh waves of troops into the meat grinder. Ukraine cannot and will not match that scale. Instead, it is using technology to change the math entirely. Ukrainian General Staff reports show that UGVs have already cut personnel casualties by up to 30%. That reduction gives breathing room for better training, extending programs from 30 to 51 days, and smarter deployment of new recruits so they feel effective rather than expendable. Commanders like Andriy Beletsky of the 3rd Army Corps see even greater potential. UGVs could soon replace up to a third of frontline infantry roles, freeing soldiers for rotation rest and higher value missions. In the long term, that figure could climb dramatically higher. One brigade calculated that its UGVs transported supplies equivalent to what 10,000 soldiers carrying 20 kilograms each would have required. The efficiency is breathtaking. Ukraine is doubling down on this advantage with massive industrial momentum. Around 280 companies are now building UGVs, and plans call for producing over 20,000 units in 2026 alone. Each machine hauling even a conservative 100 kilograms of cargo adds up to the equivalent of recruiting tens of thousands of additional soldiers without the human cost. Russia has responded by forming special hunter units tasked solely with destroying these ground robots. But the numbers tell the story. 9,000 missions in March prove the effort is failing. The machines keep coming harder to spot, harder to stop, and far more expendable than any Russian conscript. What we are witnessing is a genuine revolution on the battlefield. Ukraine's combination of ingenuity, rapid adaptation, and sheer determination has turned the tide in ways that surprise even its own forces. Russian meat assaults that once overwhelmed positions are now met by swarms of robotic defenders that hold lines for weeks at a time. One armed UGVA from the 3rd Assault Brigade famously defended a critical intersection for 45 straight days, using thermal cameras and sustained fire to repel repeated Russian attacks without a single Ukrainian casualty in that sector. Russian soldiers have even surrendered directly to these land drones, the first time in history that troops capitulated to machines rather than humans. This is the new face of modern war drones, in the sky robots on the ground, and human soldiers directing the orchestra from safer positions. Ukraine is not just surviving, it is innovating its way toward victory, bleeding Putin's forces while preserving its own. The 2026 spring and summer offensives will test this robotic strategy like never before. But early signs suggest Russia's traditional advantages are crumbling fast. What do you think will ground robots decide the outcome of this conflict? Or can Russia find a counter before it is too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Are you as stunned by these numbers as we are? Hit. Like if you want more deep dives into Ukraine's technological edge, and subscribe right now so you never miss the latest breaking developments from the front lines. The robot war is accelerating, and the next chapter promises to be even more intense. Stay tuned because the machines are only getting started. Disclaimer. This video contains content generated or supported in whole or in part by artificial intelligence. This material is intended solely for simulation, illustration, and entertainment purposes. It does not represent real-world events, nor does it constitute political or military advice or verified information. Certain elements may be fictional, dramatized, or inaccurate. Viewers should not rely on this video as a credible source of information or as a basis for real-world decision-making.